How do you feel when someone else truly understands what you are going through?
Hello and welcome to Coil Coaching Thriving One. We're so excited to have you guys with us again this week. And we have a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about the power of empathy. But before we do, we want to jump in and just share with you guys what's coming up, what's going on. We got some exciting stuff happening. So September, the first week of September, every year we launch our programs. And so we do two main themes of programs. One is a personal development program, and the other one is an advanced leadership program. So our personal development program is called Kingdomize One. It runs for 6 months, and its goal is to focus on helping individuals grow in every area of their life. And so that's Kingdomize One. You can see testimonies and more details on that on our website, coilcoaching.com, underneath our programs tab. So you can go ahead and check that out. And then also our advanced leadership programs, which are twofold. One is a coaching. So if you're interested in coaching, or if you want to upgrade your leadership prowess, we're starting that. It starts a little bit later on, but we started actually with our Kingdomize One programs, a part of the coaching. So it does start in September. And then we also, later on in the year, that's a part of the programs that we do in starting in September. It's like a prerequisite, is we do like a form of counseling. So if you're interested in, we call it life consulting is the term for it. Basically, it's just helping people that feel like they're trapped in cycles, or need to do some inner work, inner healing, heart work. We actually train people also to do that also. And if you're looking for coaching, one-on-one coaching, or consulting or counseling, you can also find it on our website. We would love to support you. So awesome. what else is going on? What's going on, babe?
I know, like exciting stuff.
Yes.
Like I highly recommend, our programs, especially if you are also looking for a community that you can grow with.
Yes.
We've had some great success stories from our students who have graduated. So And if you're not following us yet on Instagram and Facebook, please do so. We have our testimonies there. So anyway, also Coil Coaching Women. Wow. So we are going to be having another online gathering in August, which is this month. It's going to be August 26th, which is on a Friday, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. California, USA time. And so if you're in Asia, that means Saturday morning. And good news for the Europeans, my women in Europe. I know you've been emailing me, and I see you, I hear you. We are working on another time slot to kind of alternate our online gathering, doing it on one of the days and times where you can actually make it and it's not midnight over there. So so be looking out for that. We hear you, we see you.
Come on, yes.
And then obviously I am excited to have our first Coil Coaching Women in-person retreat.
That's exciting.
It's I've been dreaming with God, and I'm putting together a team. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be a time of reset, refreshing, recalibrating all the R's that you can think of. But it's coming up in October 21st and 22nd. So if you can save the date on that, we're working out all the other details, and we will make sure that we will give you the details soon.
So good. So exciting.
Yeah, I know. Lots going on. And I think this is going into our topic for today. The community aspect of it, and us like going through the things that we're going through right now individually. There is so much strength and power in community. And one of the things, as we were praying about like what to discuss in one of our podcasts, the topic of empathy actually came up a while back, along with the topic of belonging that we were discussing. So today I want to, we want to dig in deeper, more of like as an open conversation between Matt and I. And obviously, as you're watching this, we want to invite you to participate in the conversation as well. Whether you're by yourself, you're taking notes, or you're watching this with someone, and you can pause the video and you can talk about empathy.
Yeah.
So just to start off, empathy, when you hear the word empathy, it really goes beyond concern or sympathy.
Right.
Empathy is like stepping into the shoes of another, okay, the shoes of another with the intention to better understand and feel what they are experiencing.
Right.
So it's more than just like, I am sympathizing with you. It's actually like walking a mile in the person's shoes.
Right.
It is expressed, in our choice to be fully present. Okay. This word will come up once in a while. Fully present with someone and listen. Okay. Listen beyond their words for their feelings and unmet needs. So knowing that at least one person gets what I'm going through is the gift of empathy.
Yes.
And then there's the power of empathy, which can bridge our us versus them perceptions,
right,
and lead to new solutions, improve relationships, better strategies for social change and reduction in loneliness, and the realization of our shared human needs and oneness. So this conversation today is about sharing experiences, Matt and I will share our experiences based on the questions, experiences giving, receiving, and observing empathy.
So good.
Yeah, I'm excited. So the first question that I want to ask you and, us is, is how do you feel when someone else truly understands what you are going through?
Yeah. I think that feeling of relatability, the feeling of support is really happening.
Yeah.
I think a feeling that I'm not alone.
Yes.
I think it's a huge thing,
Yes.
as I'm going through, especially if we're talking like a hard situation or a difficult situation. Yeah. It's like, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the kind of first things that come to mind for me.
Yes. And I would have to agree with that, like, especially like when when you're going through something, especially if it's something that you feel that nobody understands,
right.
We do have that. I mean, I do agree that there are some experiences that only you can actually understand because you're the one walking through.
Right.
Like, and I liken that with an example of giving birth. I know it comes up like, like when a woman gives birth, right? And her husband is right beside her. Even though the husband may feel like, I wish I could give birth for you, right? But that's not possible. No, I have to go through the birthing process. And what empathy, and you can feel alone because, you look at like movies and stuff, and if you've ever experienced giving birth, you look around and everybody's trying to help you.
Right.
And you're like, or whatever it is your experience is. And empathy there is obviously a part of it is walking in our shoes, but sometimes there is that point that we have to walk it out.
Right.
But feeling not alone, as Matt was saying, like
yes.
When I gave birth to Madison, he was right there.
Yes.
And it just made me feel that, wow, even though I have to go through the birthing process, Matt was there with me.
Right.
And that feeling, like, yeah, he understood, a part of my experience, even though he's not going through it.
Yeah.
And he understood it enough that he says, I'll be right by your side.
Right.
And that was an incredible time.
Yeah.
When Madison was born.
Yes.
So
yeah, super important. Like I call it withness.
Oh, I love that.
Like empathy is withness. And not just with them, but leaning into feeling what they're feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never given birth.
Right.
I've had some painful gas that I've passed, but like I can't relate to that experience, but I can relate to the emotions and I can relate to the difficulty, and then be with you in that moment. Yeah. Fully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not just like, that, Matt wasn't like eating like a brownie while he was there, he was fully present with me, and that makes someone, like myself, going through something that I'm not just there by myself.
Yeah.
So,
and you had a C-section, and that was wild.
It was wild.
And the doctor's like, do you want to come watch? I'm like, no, I'm gonna stay on this side of the sheet. When you pop the baby out, then I'll look.
Yes. She was a big baby.
Yeah, for me to be with you, I don't want to be with you, but on the floor. If I see something that who knows what's going to happen when you see with a C-section. I mean, there's a lot going on back there.
It's 7 layers of, we can talk about that later. But it's the depthness of it is like, the experience is like 7 layers of process.
Oh, I was gonna say substrata of your belly.
Yeah. And I am so thankful that also I had a doctor who actually knew what she was doing.
Right.
Like sometimes, like when I don't know what I'm doing and I am experiencing what I was experiencing, there are people around me that are with me, and I appreciated my doctor because I had Madison when I was 35, and she also had her kids when she was 35, and she had 30 years of experience giving birth, understanding women, and so that was really important. So,
and she could empathize with you at another level.
She was able to empathize with me at another level, and she was able to give me advice on certain things because she's either been through it or she's walked people through it. Totally. So wow. So anyway, that's good. That's a good
pregnancy story.
Right. So the second question that that I would like to ask you guys, you can answer this and we'll answer this as well, is what helps you understand, when you think about empathy, what helps you understand what someone else is experiencing or feeling? Like for example, for me, I was the one who gave birth and then you were there. What helped you understand what I was experiencing or feeling? Like, even though you weren't the one giving birth.
Yeah. I guess there's kind of several things. It's a bit of a mindset shift that I'm connecting with where you're at more than where I'm at.
Oh, I love that. Can you say that again?
Yeah, so I'm connecting with where you're at more than where I'm at. Yeah. And so, I think it takes a lot of skill to be able to do that, especially in marriage. In relationships, especially with people that are really close to you, to empathize with them.
Oh yeah.
Especially if you disagree with them, because it's more about it's more about connecting. So empathy, the activation of empathy, is to create and maintain connection. Yeah. And so connection in your relational space. Yeah. And so if I'm getting triggered by a situation, and I can't be present, then I can't be activating empathy for and with you. Right. Exactly. And I think that's one of the biggest, if that comes up at some point or not, like there's hindrances, like there's more hindrances to empathy than actually exercising empathy. I think empathy is straightforward if you know how to do it well. But I think the hindrances is what really get us stuck in being able to be present or to be with somebody in a moment of pain, especially if you disagree.
Yes.
I mean,
I think we can dive into that a little bit if you want.
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I would say that the hindrances, one of the biggest hindrances to being connected to someone when you're triggered, or is when you're triggered, is like what you're doing or saying is causing me to remember or be aware of a past pain. Right. So maybe we got an argument that didn't work out so great in the past, right? Or disagreement. And so now I'm triggered, like, oh, it's going to turn out the same way.
Yes.
So
that's real.
So now I'm in protection mode rather than being present mode.
Right.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you've done it. I've done it.
We've all
We'll
done it.
we'll do it at times because it's not
Right.
about being perfect. It's about growing together.
Mhm.
Empathy is
Yeah.
all about relating to one another and
Mhm.
connecting with one another.
Yeah.
So for us to connect, so if I'm feeling triggered, maybe even not
Right.
from something she is doing,
Mhm.
but I'm feeling this like I can't be present right now.
Yeah.
I go through some different techniques to get into this space of like, man,
Right.
how can I be present for her?
Yeah.
And sometimes
Oh,
that looks like, hey, let's take a break.
that's true. Yep.
Right. So like if
Mhm.
we're disagreeing on something, we're both triggered and we're
Mhm.
just rubbing on each other and we just keep like, no, this is what I meant. No, this is what we're just going
Yeah.
back and forth. We've learned and we're still practicing because it's an art.
Yes. Yes.
Like, hey, let's take a break. Hey,
Mhm.
let's take 10 minutes.
Right.
Or like, hey, go for a
I
drive.
probably need an hour or
Right.
2 hours.
Right. And that's a part of
That's so intense.
activating empathy is like
Mhm.
understanding, right? So empathy is
Right.
understanding,
Right.
like, hey, I'm having a hard time being present and empathetic with
Mhm.
you. You're having a hard time being
Right.
present, empathetic with me. Let's take a break so
Yeah.
we can calm down and get
Yeah.
into a space of
Yeah.
logic instead of being in this
Right.
triggered state.
Yeah. I'm also curious because I also like obviously when we do that, Matt and I obviously are two different people, two
Mhm.
different personalities. So when we take a break, right? We each have our own process.
Right.
And so I'm curious, like if you're okay to share, like what are like maybe a couple things that you do
Mm.
in order to get from that triggered state
Okay.
into the state
Of
of like
empathy.
I can now be fully present
Mhm.
when we meet
Yeah,
again.
totally. So I think what we just mentioned is
Mhm.
the key thing is when our emotions tell us so much.
Right.
So if we're heightened into a frustration, uh, anger, or sad,
Mhm.
or anxious
Yeah.
emotional state, we're at a place where we can't be present with one another.
Mhm.
So that's like a triggering. They call it triggering,
Yeah.
right? And so first it's like, hey, we're not getting anywhere,
Mhm.
and I think we're going to do more damage. So let's take a break.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
normally what kind of one
Yeah.
of the phrases like, hey, babe, I'm normally the
Yeah.
one that initiates this.
Yes. Because my personality is I'm a fight type, so I'm just like, oh, this is normal.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah,
gonna keep
yeah,
going.
yeah, yeah. And I'm
But
more of the sensitive
yeah.
one to this space. So I'm like, hey, let's take a break. We're not getting
Yes.
anywhere, and
Yeah.
it's not going to be helpful.
Mhm.
And so we take a break, and so my journey of when we're like taking a break is like I have to first like let myself know like, hey,
Yeah.
what's going on, or hey, what do I need?
Mhm.
And so there's this self-assessment or this
Oh, that's good.
self-awareness that you have to do.
Yeah.
And it's all depending on the situation,
Mhm.
how I'll approach each thing, because a trigger is a reminder of a painful or traumatic experience in your life,
Yeah.
be it relationally, be it emotionally,
Mhm.
etc. And so if you're in that heightened state, like I don't feel understood, or I'm not heard, or
Mhm.
so I'm going to reconnect with the awareness of like, hey, dude,
Yeah.
this is not life and death. My
Mhm.
emotions are bigger
Yeah.
than the situation requires.
Yeah.
And so I'll just connect with myself, and I'll practice empathy with myself.
Oh, that's good. I think that's a good starting point. That's a key
Definitely.
thing.
Right. And again, it's being
Mhm.
with yourself. So I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm upset and I'm frustrated right now.
Right.
That's a big part of activating empathy for myself. So
Mhm.
a lot of times we got to do it for ourselves so we can know how to do it and to be able to be masters of doing it for others.
Right.
Right. And so I'm
That's
doing
really
that
good.
with myself.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm really frustrated right now. So
Mhm.
I'm talking through the emotions. How can I be with myself? Well, I've
Mhm.
got to acknowledge and validate what I'm experiencing right now.
Yeah.
Okay, oh, man, I'm feeling really frustrated about this conversation or this thing we're doing
Mhm.
that we're not agreeing on,
Yeah.
buddy. And that's so I'll talk to myself, and that's the key to moving forward is having this conversation with this triune being
Yes.
within who you are. So I'm going to talk to my soul.
Mhm.
I'm going to talk to my heart, um,
Mhm.
and, if you're seeing yourself as your spirit man, engaging with
Mhm.
your soul, and
Right.
helping it, because that's what's going on in the soul space is the emotions.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, buddy, I hear you, man. We're feeling frustrated right now. I'm just
Mhm.
acknowledging, validating it.
Yeah. Oh,
What's going on?
yes.
And so I'll just kind of think about maybe what what and why I'm being triggered. Oh, dude,
Mhm.
this reminds us of this other situation.
Yeah.
Okay. all right, is this life and death? I'll just kind of talk through some of these things of like, man, my emotions are way bigger than the situation requires.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like just being with myself. I'm like, buddy, you do feel frustrated.
Yeah.
You do feel mad.
It's good.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So I'm starting just now to de-escalate the intensity, because I'm going to keep using this phrase, my emotions are not matching the situation.
Right.
I call it the haunting. So if I'm getting triggered, it's the voice of my past coming in and making this small situation look like a bigger one.
Right.
And so I'm just connecting with that space. Hey, buddy, acknowledge, validate.
That's
I'm
really
feeling
good.
frustrating. I'm feeling mad.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm with you. And then once I just kind of like I call it sitting in the mess. Like, buddy, I love you. I'm just going to speak confidence and courage and compassion over myself. Buddy, I'm with you. We're recognizing that we're getting triggered. And a lot of times just acknowledging the fact of what's happening internally helps de-escalate you into a place of clarity.
Yeah.
And there it is. I'm being with myself. I'm gonna keep saying that word. It's so key. Empathy is the key.
Empathy and with is
right. And they coincide. They're like the definition of empathy is to be with them. And so to be with them, you're feeling what they're feeling. You're aware of what they're feeling.
Right.
Right. And so I'm walking through that process, and then I'm just speaking compassion. And so, empathy, compassion is to suffer with. The word compassion. Come means with, and passion means to suffer. Right. So I'm suffering with. Basically, I'm getting into that space of suffering with them. Yeah. Experiencing what they're experiencing in a sense. Yep. And I can relate to them. And so now I'm back at what I call the baseline of peace. Right. When I'm back at the baseline of peace, everything is back down. I can see, I can now act in clarity. So then we come back. So how about you? What's your process, babe?
Yeah, I think what you were experiencing, what you were talking about is like basically like what we do too. Like we actually teach this process in our programs. Yeah. Especially the advanced leadership program, like you were talking about. Probably I was hearing the AVAC process in there. And basically the AVAC process is acceptance. Is that what it is?
Well, okay. The AVAC process is a way that we help people transition through with clients and then also for themselves. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're curious what that is, join our program.
Yes, definitely.
Like we teach you how to do it for yourself and also how to do that for others.
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, basically, like, because my personality, let's just say personality, because that's the word that we can use. Yeah. Is that behavioral type. I'm more of like a fight type person. Yeah. So I can flow in and out with the others, but my main one is like, this is pretty normal. Let's hash it out. That's my thought process. Like, so for me, let's hash it out involves all the, so that's why Matt initiates most of the like, hey, let's take a break, because I'm like, oh, I'm not fully aware, that, okay, we do need a break.
Right. Because I'm more on what would be called the agreeable spectrum.
Right.
And that's why like I dive more into the counseling. Like I'm more of this, I would call it sensitivity. Yes. Right. Yes. To awareness of what people are feeling and needing. And so for me, intensity doesn't help me be present and move through being with somebody. And so so I'm normally the one like tapping out, like, okay,
I'm tapping out.
I'm now getting really upset and I'm not gonna be able to be present with you and hash this out. We got to get back to a baseline of peace.
And for me, that's where my empathy comes from. That's where my empathy starts, because for me, I'm like, but I do want to hash this out and I want to keep going. But I do know that, okay, I need to take a step back and actually empathize that, hey, my husband is now like, overwhelmed and we cannot continue the conversation. And so he needs peace instead of us continuing the conversation, a disagreement that's not going anywhere. For me, that's a part of my process. So what I do is when we take a break, I go to my room and I continue the conversation within myself. Right. My process is a little bit more like, oh, but why this? And so I continue to fight within myself, like not in a bad way. I continue the wrestle, because apparently that's what I do, and that's what I need. I need the to continue, you know. So I do that. I wrestle. I hash out all the feelings, right? The feelings I had at that moment. Sometimes I cry, sometimes I get upset, you know, but I'm with myself. And then sometimes I'm like, hey, when I get to a place of peace, or not a place of peace, like medium, sometimes my body says like, hey, you just need to maybe take a nap and process this out, you know. And I'm a lot more like, I engage with my spirit, soul, and body in a way like, God, what do I need right now? Or Lindsay, what do I need? You know. And so there's this ongoing conversation, you know, my ongoing conversation with myself and with God. And I go to this space where, because also sometimes I think that because Matt's more sensitive and all that stuff, I tend to tell myself that I am the bad person, and that my process is not the same as Matt. So therefore, and I want to fight and continue the conversation, then I must be the bad person, you know? And so I go into, therefore, the acceptance phase. So when I hash that out with the Lord, and the Lord tells me like, Lindsay, I remind myself, he says, I created you. So I go into Jeremiah 29:11, you know, I go into the scriptures, and he says like, he's reminding me that he created me, and he knew me even before I knew myself. And so I go through that, my spirit goes through that. And then I come to a point of like, Lindsay, I accept you. I accept you. And so when I think that's the biggest thing for me is as soon as I accept myself, and then I feel in a place of peace, now I'm able to like, okay, we can come in and
be
back.
productive.
And be productive
in our conversation instead of like scarring each other.
Yeah. And the thing is like, that's the beauty of it. Like no matter what, you know, and I think no matter how different we both are, and I think that's why this conversation is so powerful and it's so needed. Because, you know, it's not just for us, you know, and that's how you create the community. It's from Matt and I to Madison to everybody else around us. You know, if we can do this empathy within us, you know, because even my empathy process is different from Matt. And that's what you need, we all need to do, is that be okay that we are all different. And then if we can be with ourselves and show empathy within us, then we can now step into the empathy with others.
So good.
Yeah.
And I think I want to point out something that you were describing in your process was what I call emoting. Right. So emoting, in my definition of that, is like allowing myself to have emotions, or allowing my emotions to have a voice.
Right.
And so what does that look like?
That's good. Yeah.
And doing it in the appropriate space and time. So if like us, we're like, you know, ding, ding, like, let's go to our corners here. Let's, so that we can actually be present with one another moving forward. And it means to allow yourself to exert the anger. So if you're experiencing anger and frustration, like you having your space, if it's going for a car ride, going in your room, screaming into your pillow, or having a good cry, like those are key elements of experiencing what I would call healthy soul care. So we talked about this before. Like when, for a long time, I didn't think it was okay to express strong emotions. And so I wouldn't. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And I feel like sometimes even it's a religious thing where it's like, oh, like I can't be angry because that's not Christ-like. Where I'm like, Jesus got angry. And he flipped over some tables. Right. Jesus like process, and it was appropriate, and that's for another conversation, why he flipped over tables and how was that appropriate. But like the emoting was like, we need to let our emotions have a voice. So if we're going to be with ourselves, we need to listen to our own internal voice, and not this mental like talking, but the emotions is the other important part of who we are as individuals. We need to let those emotions have a voice. So if it looks like screaming into a pillow, I call I call it the exhaust. Like those emotions need to exhaust. If your car doesn't have a place for the internal combustion to leave, then it builds up, the car shuts off. Okay, has a breakdown. All right. It has to be exhausted. Same thing if you eat and you don't have a good poop, man. Like,
oh gosh, yes.
Constipation is painful.
Yeah.
And so many of us, myself included, in the past, I was dealing with emotional constipation because I didn't know how to express and vent my emotions appropriately.
Yeah.
Some people, like fight types, they're good at emoting their anger in a situation with a relationship, but doesn't help the relationship.
Right.
So like for us, like I would just keep letting you in the past. I would let you just like rat out. And then I get so frustrated, I would just leave. Okay. And so that wasn't helpful.
Yeah.
But you do need to emote. If you're feeling frustrated and angry, and you're in a triggered state, you need to go and be with yourself to process, let that process out.
Yes. And you still need to process, you know, when you're in a relationship like that, you know, your partner, your spouse, you know, your family member is not saying that I don't want you in my life, you know, because sometimes we can go there extremes, especially if there's insecurities, you know, and there's undealt pain and trauma. So for me, the fear of abandonment was one of the things that I had dealt with, you know, like both my parents have passed away, you know, my parents separated when I was really young. And so it's just, you know, like those things just came up, you know, so whenever in the past Matt would leave, I would be triggered into this fear of abandonment. Whereas like, oh, he left because he doesn't want to die, you know, like the fire coming out, the emoting. And so, and for people like, you know, if you relate to my experience, like you still need to be able to have that space, but not the damaging part. You know, I mean, we could even talk about this in a separate one, but, you know, I feel like it's a needed conversation, you know, so for myself, I have found that way of like, okay, I still needed to be able to emote, you know, so that I don't have emotional constipation. So is that emotional constipation, you know? and so, but there is a way to do that, you know, because I used to just explode. And then now I have learned so much, you know, in this past, I would say 3 to 5 years, maybe longer, but I know the first year of our marriage was like, I just thought everybody did stuff like that. So anyway, so that was good. I love that. So, so going now into our next conversation, and you know, we talked about briefly about, you know, how to be with yourself and all that stuff. Now we could go towards like, how do you build empathy? You know, like how do you I'm gonna put in like a few things out there, a few nuggets out there. This is not all inclusive, but this is just a part of a bigger conversation, obviously. Totally. So
an important one, very important.
And if you don't know where to start, you can just choose one of these 4 things. It's like, hey, I get it, you know, whether you're single, you're married, you're a parent, you're like, wow, like I do need to be a part of this conversation, you know, and see what the thing is, what can I do, and then what will I do?
Right.
So one of the things that I actually tell myself, and what I've learned, you know, because my personality is like my way or the highway. I mean, this is what I was younger. Okay.
Sure.
So one of the things that I learned is that to challenge, okay, there's that word again. If you're into Enneagram, I'm an 8, if you're curious, and Matt is
the challenger,
the 9,
the peacekeeper.
I'm
the peacekeeper.
Yes. So for me, I'm like, oh, I'm going to use my strength into this conversation.
Yeah.
So I started challenging my own prejudice.
Yes.
Because for someone like me, I'm like, okay, this is the right thing. This is the way, you know, because it's hard sometimes to remember that just because you firmly believe in something doesn't mean it's the right thing or the only right way.
Right.
You know, so what I did is I took time to analyze my own prejudices. You know, I learned how to see individual people rather than put them in a group.
Right.
You know, and so that like put them in a label, a group label, those people over there, or the
Those
gangsters,
peacekeepers.
those, so so I learned to see each person, even teaching personalities and behavioral things. I have learned how to not box people and just see them as individual people rather than as a group. It helped me practice my empathy, and I encourage you guys to do that as well.
Yeah. So what I'm kind of hearing you say is, so if in my experience is I'm prone to be judgmental, and that comes from my own personal journey of judgment I put on myself, of having to be perfect, etc. And I remember this experience I had where I was listening to someone talk about judgment and judging others, and I remember driving down the street and seeing this person all dressed in black, like a goth, like a teenager dressed in all black, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's that crazy outfit? Right. And then I listened to this talk about judgment, and I remember this. I'm like, man, I was being really judgmental. And so I had to shift out of judgment into celebration.
That's good.
So I think, to empathize with people is to see them for who they are, and to be with them.
Yes.
And so I remember driving down the street. This is back when we lived in Oregon, smaller town. So I came across this person again, and when I drove by them, next time I saw them, I said, man, they're so creative.
Yeah.
I love the way that they express their freedom, no matter what you think about goth, etc. Because it doesn't matter about that. It matters. The individual is what matters. And so it's laying down that prejudice, and seeing them for who they are.
Yes. For who, through the eyes of God, or through the eyes of love and kindness, if that's what you think.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to put it.
Yeah. And also, one of the other things that I do is, and then that you could practice this too, is search for things, that you share in common with someone who you originally see as one specific label, or one specific, like that you're not the same, and use that commonality to forge a connection with that person.
Right.
Because again, the key word for empathy is connection. It's not like
the goal.
The goal is connection. It's not like, because we agree, we can be connected. Sometimes the empathy goes on a different side, and say, I empathize, so we find something that we can connect, and we forge a connection with that person. Like, for example, I remembered one of the things that there's a lot of things that attracted me to you. There's a lot of things,
my legs.
Yes. There's other things that I cannot say here, but one of the things specifically was that when I found out that you also loved Star Wars, like the movie at that time, I could remember specifically thinking like, we can have something in common.
Yes.
And it made me feel that, I can forge a connection with Matt, and especially our love for the youth at that time. I think that was one of the things too, that was like, I would find, even though like Matt and I grew up obviously in two different countries, have two different personalities. And then when I started to find something in common with him, I used those things to forge a connection with him.
Right.
And I think that that's what happened with our friendship.
Right, because you started laying down your prejudices about me.
Yes.
Big time. She was very racist against me.
Oh gosh, no, that's not.
She was very prejudiced against me. Another story for another time.
For another time. Yes.
And I think I feel like Holy Spirit prompted me with this phrase that there's more that connects us than separates us.
Yes.
There's more that connects us. Yes. And it's so easy to get focused on what doesn't connect us, like disagreement, or a political disagreement, or a doctrinal disagreement. And we end up missing the purpose of our existence, which is love.
Yes.
And
I love that.
Connection and acceptance. Now, you don't have to agree with somebody to connect with them.
Right.
Because, a finger, can't relate to a nose, but they sure do work together really well.
That's right. Our body is a perfect example. If we look at each part, they have their own functions, they disagree,
Yes.
but they have something in common. They're forging a connection to create one body,
right,
as a whole to
yes,
function.
yeah,
I think that's great. um so I think this third one is kind of connected with the first one, but I would say invite you guys to challenge your biases and assumptions.
yeah,
So the other one was prejudice, but now I'm going to go deeper into biases and assumptions. I would frequently ask myself, why do I think the way I do? Because as a kid, I had my own perception, and my mom would say, people don't think like, not everybody thinks like you, not everybody
right,
talks like you, and as a 6 7 year old 10 year old, like I'm growing.
yeah,
And she would always tell me, thank goodness for moms, she would always tell me, like, no matter where you go, Lindsay, you will always be working with people. No matter
yes,
what you do in life, no matter what your preferences are, no matter what your calling is, for you, the people. And I realized that when I got to know the Lord, that the reason why he came was for the people.
yeah,
So I'm like, wow, this is incredible. So growing up now, like, especially, I've been a Christian for 23 years. I began to deeply and continually ask myself why I think the way I do, because a lot of our assumptions and prejudices are sometimes based on misinformation, either in social media, like at least right now, to be relevant.
right,
We had newspapers before, but right now, like, there's social media, all information is available there. Like, great. Obviously, it's in the internet. It must be true, right? Yeah. And so I would say, like, at least this last 5 years, I started to educate myself, and I would invite you guys, to educate yourself and listen, empathize, especially with the groups or people that are affected by the misinformation. So
so
challenge your biases.
Yeah, challenge your biases.
Challenge them.
Yeah, and I think the key here is humility.
Yes.
To really be able to walk in empathy, or to walk like Christ,
yes,
you have to have ample amount of humility. And I'm thinking in James 4, around verse 6, it says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble.
Yeah.
And grace simply is the empowerment to do what God requires. Absolutely. So God requires us to walk in love. It's not an easy feat.
No.
It takes a lot of humility.
Yes.
And so to activate empathy, we have to be walking in humility. And humility basically is the opposite of pride. Pride means I know it all.
Yeah.
And what that also pride means is bias. Like, I have a certain way, and this is the way it should be done.
Yep.
Or the way I this is the way I think. And so humility and being teachable and learnable is learnable a word? Be teachable. Be teachable is so key to activating empathy.
Yeah. I love that. And it comes to the next point, treat people as being important.
Yes.
And this is key for all of us to know, when we start treating people as if they have as much importance as we do, we begin to recognize that you and I aren't the only one living in this world,
right,
and that you and I aren't some superior being.
Right.
Just flat out, straightforward. If you treat people as also important, like, our body is a perfect example for that. Each, like, if we treat, like, like the body, like, if you treat your heart as much as an important and unseen, the heart is mainly unseen, but it's there, and it's an important part of your body.
Yeah.
So and I think when I started to recognize that, like, I remembered an encounter I had with the Lord back in 2008. I think it was around that time. He told me, he says, Lindsay, I want you to pay attention to every single person that you meet, regardless if they are saved or not. Because I have placed in them the image and likeness, when they created each person.
Yeah.
And I would begin, it's like, I want you to be able to learn about me in each of the person that you meet, because each person carries that.
Right.
So I started to do that, like, everybody that I met, I would ask the Lord, like, what facet of yourself you are releasing right now, and you're teaching me through this person.
Right.
So, and you'd be surprised, I've learned kindness, gentleness, self-control from different people.
Right.
So like
me.
like you. Yeah. So take each person, as they come. Don't lump sum them into stereotypical groups with misinformation of like a one size fits all. It's not a one size fits all, because each person is an individual and comes with a set of flaws and strengths.
Right.
So
yeah, and I think a big thing about that humility piece and what you're talking about, people are valuable, is we're not meant to do life alone.
Yes.
We're not meant to do life on our own.
Yeah.
Those around us bring a piece that we need in our own lives. They enrich our lives, and we enrich their lives. And if we just view our lives through our own perspectives of who we are, the way we do things, then we're very limited to our experience of life, each other, and ultimately God, because God's coming back for a united bride.
Yes.
Jesus is coming back for a united bride. He's not coming back from a divided bride. And so I think empathy is so key for the world to hear right now, because unity is a big important. Like, what are we coming around? What are we coming around?
Yeah.
And what are we focusing on that connects us rather than what separates us?
Yeah.
Because there's you don't have to look far to find things that separate the human race.
Yeah.
From the political to to the COVID stuff to you name it, it's out there. Doctrinal, right? So what connects us?
Yeah, I think that's probably like what we would invite you guys, like, number one, have this same conversation with people that people that you love, but also at the same time, like, what can I do? Ask yourself that question. We invite you to say, like, what can I do and what will I do?
Yeah.
Right. So we discussed like a few things about like how to build, what empathy is, our experiences, and how to build empathy, so you can choose one of those 4 things that we discussed, or any other things that we discussed today,
right,
and take that. You don't have to be like, you don't have to do like a high stake one.
Right.
If high stakes is what God's leading you to do, a major shift, a major change, do it, because there's grace for you. There's going to be grace for that shift. But if you're just like, hey, I'm just starting out and I just, entering in this conversation, start with something small. You don't have to eat the whole cake in one sitting. You can just have a slice and devour that slice.
Yeah. And
just go for it. So our ending question is, from everything that we've discussed today, is there a next step that you can take based upon our conversation today?
Yeah. So good. Yeah. And
pray.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
We're so good. This is so good. So I want to just we'll end with that. And I'm just thinking here that I'm going to just pray for us here and just wrap this time up. But this reality is so key and so important. We'll probably really hit on this kind of topics for a while now, and just really hit it home. And so, Lord, we thank you so much for what you're doing in and through our lives. God, we need more of you.
Yes.
We need your love. We need your empathy. We need your compassion. Will you teach us, Holy Spirit, how to connect and be with people? Because that is your goal. Your goal is connection with you, connection with others, and connection within ourselves. So we bless you as you go into this week. And we're grateful and thankful for you. And we just want you to know you are valuable.
Yes.
So until next time, have a blessed day.
Yay.
Love you guys.